What's good, y'all? Welcome back to the Playmakers Corner podcast. I am your host, Simon Villanos, aka Coach V, and it is July 27th, 2025 when I am recording this. And it's been a while, but I am bringing you yet another player spotlight. But instead of talking about some Colorado boys high school football, we're going to talk about some Colorado girls high school football here. We got some flag football content here. And on all of our spotlights, just like with the boys, we're going to talk about the stats from, last year, because it's only been a sanctioned sport for a year. We'll talk about some key games, their best statistical game, some big wins that they got throughout the season, and then the playoff success that they had as well. I think all of these players that we're going to talk about won a playoff game, so we'll talk about that as well as the ones that they lost as well. Then we'll talk about, a little bit more of their game. So for the boys, I know we did film breakdown grades and whatnot. We do not have a rubric that has been fleshed out just yet. That is in the works, but we're going to keep it pretty simple. We'll talk about strengths that each player has, and then some areas of improvements that we're looking for them to improve through this last off season, going into this next fall season. And then if they have any flag football offers, we'll talk about that, and then some potential big games to look out for this season, or games to go to this season if you want to check them out. But on this episode, we're going to be talking about all quarterbacks here. So yes, it is the big glamorous position here, but I think there's no other way of starting our girls flag football player spotlights than starting with the great quarterbacks, who bring a lot of attention to the game. And there's some real talent here. I think every single player on this list are players that can play on the college level, to varying degrees though. So we'll definitely talk about that as well. But without further ado, let's just go ahead and hop into our first player here. That first player will be the incoming sophomore class of 2028. Quarterback from Chaparral, Zoey Fink here. Started last year as a freshman, but we, as a podcast, actually got to watch her play in the Magnolia Bowl and Summer League right before her freshman year, where she turned it up and tore it up. Not just for that year, but I think that was her second year playing in that league. So she had plenty of experience coming in as a freshman and being a starter. But last season, won newcomer of the year, by the way, for the 5A classification, and was an all freshman team player for us here at PMC. And Chaparral had a pretty good year. They only lost to like 3 teams. They lost to Mountain Vista, which I was at that game. They lost to Legend right at the end of the season. It was a 1-point loss. And then they lost to Valor in the playoffs. But let's talk about the season as a whole first. In her freshman year, she passed for 3,072 yards and 50 touchdowns to 15 interceptions. Also rushed for 461 yards and 2 touchdowns. I think her best statistical game was on August 24th, where she tore up Lakewood 22 and went 22 of 28 for 310 yards and 6 touchdowns. Did throw 1 pick, though, and had 34 rushing yards. It was a 63-0 win against Lakewood there. I guess her next key game, I would say, would be their first CHASA-sanctioned playoff game, which they would win with a 32-0 win over North Glen in the first round, 22 of 27 for 239 yards, 4 touchdowns, 25 rushing yards, no picks. But unfortunately, in the next round of the playoffs, they would lose a close one to Valor Christian, 12-20, and I actually went ahead and rewatched that game. She threw for 186 yards, 2 touchdowns, 1 pick, 20 rushing yards. Not a bad game. They had a chance to win it as well, but it just was one of those situations where they really couldn't get too much going there in the fourth quarter. They kept it relatively close. It was a 1-score game for most of this, but it just felt like it just got away from them down the stretch, and they were just a little bit too cold to make anything happen. So there you go. And by the way, I think it was 12-18 for a good amount of that fourth quarter, and then unfortunately a tough safety would make it 12-20. So a close game against a Valor Christian team that went to the semis last year. But All in all, a pretty good year for a freshman. I think by far she was easily the best freshman quarterback in the state of Colorado here, just playing at a very high level. I mean, there was a point where this Chaparral team was on a pretty insane winning streak, and then it came down to them playing Mountain Vista, which, like I said, I was at that game, and against Mountain Vista, they were actually up for a decent amount of it, or at least at the beginning they were up, and then Mountain Vista, being Mountain Vista, mounted a comeback and won that one in a relatively, I think it was probably one of their closer games in the regular season, probably second closest game in the regular season. We'll talk about Mountain Vista later though, but other than that, Chaparral, I mean, they had an excellent first year as flag football was a CHSAA-sanctioned sport here, and it was partially thanks to how well Zoey Fink played at quarterback. And let's go ahead and talk about the things that I really like about her game. To start, I feel like she has better mechanics than a lot of quarterbacks in the state, both boys and girls. I love her footwork, maneuvering, her release is super quick and natural, it's pure, and allows her to play the game at her pace. As she hits every offseason, she will only get stronger, which is just something I'm noting right now. But as far as mechanics go, I feel like she's getting a lot out of it, right? She's getting the most juice she can from every single throw, and it's because her mechanics are so good. In fact, I do think there are like upperclassmen quarterbacks in the state that don't have the footwork and release and all that stuff that Zoey Fink has right now. But it allows her to play at a very high level, very methodical as well. Another thing I really like about Zoey Fink's game is that she's a great game manager, and that's not a bad thing at all. I think something that a lot of young, especially inexperienced quarterbacks, right? You know, there hasn't been as many opportunities for girls to play flag football in the state. It's definitely something that's been booming in the last couple years. You know, it's hard to gain that game maturity, right? And know, okay, as cool as deep passes and mid to deep passes are, right? Sometimes I just gotta take what's there. I gotta understand the situation that I'm in, and I feel like she is very disciplined and takes what they're playing with great maturity. For a freshman, now incoming sophomore quarterback, I think she does a great job of not being rushed. And what that means is that she plays at her own pace. She keeps the offense going. She gets the ball out quick. She makes the right reads. I do think there is a tendency to be on the conservative side of things, but she knows where to get the ball to, who to get the ball to, what the situation is. And I really like how she manages games. And honestly, you know, to be a great quarterback, or even to be a good quarterback, I would say, let's start with that. To be a good quarterback, that is something that you need. You need to know when to not overcomplicate things and just get the ball to your playmakers. And that's what she does. And she has some great playmakers over there at Chaparral. Last year and going into this year, she will have great playmakers. And she just did a great job of distributing the ball, playing point guard, and not being rushed, doing her thing over there, and then also knowing when to take some shots downfield here and there for some big plays. That is the thing outside of her mechanics, I would say. But I would say this quality, the maturity of play, is what separates her from other quarterbacks in the state, both boys and girls. Because I know plenty of quarterbacks who rush, they're looking for big plays. There is probably a level of anxiety to it as well. But Zoey Fink just seems cool, calm, collected, and she just does her thing out there. And I don't think there's really any question about that. I think stylistically, and I've thought about this a lot as I've watched her play, both in the summer league and watching her play live as well. I think stylistically, very close to how Tom Brady, and I feel like that's high praise, but hear me out. I feel like it's very close to how Tom Brady used to play, right? A lot of short passes, knowing when to get, you know, the first downs and whatnot as well, not just settling for short passes, right? But a lot of short passes to really get in her groove and get going. I think more modernly, Jalen Hurts is probably a better comparison as well, especially because I think she's a pretty solid athlete that could run a little bit. But if we want to go girls flag football comparisons, let's go women's college flag football here. I see a lot of Alexa Wilson from Thomas, younger Alexa Wilson for sure. the one that brought them to a couple national championships, semis, and whatnot. And obviously her game would eventually, well, not eventually, but it would definitely evolve as she grew as a passer and would make some crazier and crazier throws, right? But I think just the way she approaches the game, taking what's there and being efficient with the ball, taking care of the football, it reminds me a little bit of Alexa Wilson, maybe a little bit of Holly Neer from St. Thomas as well. I could see a little bit of that. Someone who had some great athletes and just did a good job distributing the ball. So there you go. I'm trying to have a couple comparisons here when doing this film breakdown part. Now, let's talk about areas of improvements. Obviously, she's just a freshman, so there's always going to be things to improve. But I think the younger you are as a player, the more that there's going to be. And so let's start with this one. I'd like to see more consistency with her deeper throws. I think as she gets stronger, she will get more comfortable to make these mid to deep throws here. I think the timing is there, the accuracy, ball placement, it could vary from time to time, and I do think maybe part of that is an arm strength thing, right? As your arm gets stronger, you're going to be more comfortable making those throws, both obviously from a physical and mental standpoint, just knowing that you can make those, and then physically having the ability to consistently hit those. I think there were times that she would take shots downfield and, the ball placement wasn't exactly perfect. Sometimes it was, though. I will say that sometimes it was, and the timing was perfect as well. I think she has great timing. That's another thing I really like about her game. But the accuracy and ball placement varied from time to time. So I think that's something that's going to improve on its own, as I'm just assuming it's going to improve on its own as she gets stronger, puts in work through this offseason, through all the off seasons that are ahead of her. And that's something that should steadily improve over time. But something else I would like to continue to see from her to improve, and let's talk about some of her losses here. In the Valor Christian and Mountain Vista game, I got to watch both here. I think there are times that she was just too passive, focusing more on getting the ball out quick to her playmakers like a Sophia O'Donnell, who's a great player over there. But like I said, she would rather focus on getting the ball out quick to those playmakers than really observing the defense and knowing where, there might be opportunities to take some shots. And shots, they're not always just deep passes. They could be mid-range passes as well, 15 and up or 10 and up, maybe even as well. I think some of that could be by play design, but I felt like there were drives throughout both games where I just felt like the sense of urgency should have been flipped up a level slightly, and she should have been looking for bigger chunk plays to keep the defense honest, because there's only so much you could do just throwing it short. It relies a lot on receivers making something happen after the catch. And, when you start playing against really good defenses, I think defenses that are contenders like a Valor Christian, who have so many great athletes that they could throw out there, then, that becomes a little bit of an issue to out-athlete another athlete time after time after time again. Sometimes you got to keep the defense honest and throw one right behind the linebackers, right? And have those defenders back off a little bit so that your receivers could go make a play in space, right? And so I think that's something she could definitely work on here. I made that Tom Brady comparison earlier. Tom Brady, yes, he took a lot of short stuff, but, he would throw that dig right over the middle to keep somebody honest, or he would throw a perfect corner route to go ahead and back off that corner just a little bit and give the receiver some cushion to make more work, right? It's all about spacing when it comes to football, whether it's flag, whether it's tackle here. And spacing wise, you don't ever want to let the defense settle in to their area zones and just crack down hard on any specific area. You want to keep them, guessing just a little bit. They have an idea of what you're doing already, right? Because I assume everyone does film and scouting and stuff like that. What you want to do in game is to keep them out of a rhythm. As much as they're trying to keep you out of rhythm, you got to keep them out of a rhythm and show that, you got a little bit of bag work. You have the ability to pick apart the defense literally wherever they are. And so I would like to see her be a tad bit more aggressive in the right situations. I do think she errs on the side of being passive and conservative, which is not a bad thing. It's taking care of the football, right? And, that does matter when it comes down to, the game of football, winning the turnover battle and whatnot. But I do think there are times where you're going to get into games against a Mountain Vista and a Valor, and you're going to need to put the foot down on him. And it's hard to do that when you're only throwing a short game, or where you're just trying to throw a short game, and they know that. Against Mountain Vista, watching that game, they're up multiple scores. I thought there were times where, a drive would just die because they would not be getting enough yards, as many yards as they could, to not only keep the drive going, but also keep the clock going, keep the Vista offense sidelined, which is, I think, the bigger deal when you're playing teams that have quarterbacks who are dangerous when they're on the field, like we're about to talk about here. And I think there's a good chance that, Zoey Fink, she has to outduel some of these quarterbacks that we're going to talk about this episode. If they want to win a state championship, she's probably going to have to outduel at least two of these quarterbacks that we are about to talk about on this episode. That's just what it's going to come down to. I think as a whole, let's talk about this upcoming season. By the way, as of right now, no flag football offers, at least that we know of yet. I mean, she's a young player. She has plenty of time, so there's obviously no rush here. But let's talk about this season here. Chaparral, they have some big games scheduled in the regular season, and I think that's going to help them on their playoff run. So let's go ahead and talk about it. Starting with September 8th, they play Mountain Vista, a rematch from last year. They only met one time last year. And like I've been saying, I would argue that's a game they probably could have won, honestly. And then they didn't see them after that. But, Mountain Vista, they're the defending state champs from last season. If Chaparral wants to be the defending state champs, they got to find ways to beat them. And so that's going to be a great first test, but it doesn't get easier because 2 days later, they played Cherry Creek, who made a solid run last year. They also got eliminated in the quarterfinals, but they have a quarterback of their own who's special, who we're going to talk about on this episode. If they want to make a deep run in the playoffs, they're going to have to beat quarterbacks like an Addy Beck for Cherry Creek. And then last but not least, they play Legend. Last season, they lost to them by 1. I mean, that feels like a winnable game. It was like 12-13 or 13-14, something short like that. That's a team that, I would also say is a contender this year. You're going to have to run through one of them, one of these three at some point in the playoffs again, I would imagine. And so that's also a game you would like to win. So with all that being said, I feel like Chaparral is a contender going into this year. First off, because they have a quarterback. I think any team that has a quarterback in flag football, has a decent chance at being a contender. And then you just add on all the other playmakers. You have a Sophia O'Donnell, who was a 1,000-yard rusher on the 5A level, which is kind of insane, by the way, and just a great athlete in space. You have all these other great athletes on defense as well here. They have a solid defense over there. This Chaparral team is relatively young compared to some of these other contenders, and so they do have time, but why leave a window closed when you can open it yourself, right? And I think that's the opportunity they have going into this season, and I'm excited for it. I think it's going to be very exciting to watch. By the way, also got to watch Zoey Fink in a Lace-Up Junior tournament. And there were other high schools. It's not just a Lace-Up Junior thing, but there are other high schools at this game. Got to watch her throw quite a bit. And, she looked stronger. Made a nice throw down the right sideline, which was kind of insane. And so there's definitely some improvement there. And I feel like they're going to be in a pretty decent spot. I got to watch them play against a Ralston Valley team who, I say historically, it's only been like 2 seasons, but historically has a good defense. Their defensive coordinator just became their head coach, so there's that as well. Shout out Coach Johnson. And, I thought she made some nice throws against them. With that being said, this season, super excited for Zoey Fink and Chaparral. Wishing them all the best of luck this season. And to colleges out there that are listening, make sure you take a look at this Chaparral team. Zoey Fink is a great player, somebody that is probably going to be one of the faces of Colorado girls flag football here in the next couple years. And then they got some other great athletes over there, which we'll be talking about on other episodes and have made our watch list. So there you go there. But once again, wishing Zoey Fink and Chaparral all the best of luck going into this 2025 campaign. All right, now moving on, we have another quarterback. This time, all the quarterbacks we're going to talk about from here on out will be incoming seniors, so class of 26. So we have the incoming senior quarterback from Valor Christian, Faith Prinzo. I believe she's been starting since the first year. Valor has had a program last year, obviously the first sanctioned year, so that's the only year we have stats from. Could be wrong though, but last season had a good season. Passed for 3,773 yards, 49 touchdowns to only 14 picks. Also added on a decent 902 rushing yards and 9 rushing touchdowns. Let's talk about some of her big games here. I didn't list it down here, but I got to watch her play against TCA in a thrilling overtime game where she stood up and won. I think she had like 3 or so touchdowns and that one only 1 pick, so that was a good one. But I think her best statistical game had to be their last regular season game against Mountain View, who, by the way, would go on and win the 4A state championship. They would beat them, and she threw for 314 yards, 5 touchdowns to 2 picks in a 34-26 game. Also had 69 rushing yards. I would say statistically that is her best performance of her career. And for that to happen against a Mountain View team that had a lot of great players over there, a great defense, a defense that ended up beating TCA in the 4A state championship, who, Valor beat both of them. That's pretty huge. Now, in the playoffs, they would go ahead and beat Ralston Valley for the first ever playoff game, 20-12. Against that team, she threw for 21. She won 21 of 29 for 222 yards and 2 touchdowns. Also had 91 rushing yards and a rushing touchdown in that game. Like I said, a pretty decent defense, a good defense over there that she was able to play well against. Again, Chaparral, we just talked about it on the last segment, but she would also eliminate them 20-12, which is interesting here. Both playoff wins 20-12, but in that game, going 17 of 32 for 268 yards and 3 touchdowns. Did throw 1 pick, but also had 72 rushing yards and a rushing touchdown. Got to watch or rewatch a little bit of that game when I was looking at Zoey Fink's film and also looking at Faith Prinzo's film as well. And then they would lose to Arvada West in the semis, 46-12. She won 16 of 28 for 151 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 1 pick. Now, the interesting thing about Valor Christian is that they only had 3 losses all season. One of those was this playoff game I just talked about against Arvada West, but the other 2 were also against Arvada West. So honestly, if you take out Arvada West from their schedule, Valor Christian technically went undefeated. But they didn't. But because they played Arvada West 3 times, and it somehow got worse after every single matchup. The first time it was like a 2-score game. Then it became a blowout, and then it became this game. And watching this game like live again recently, it just got out of hand early on. Like, it was 2 very long plays that got it started for Arvada West. One was like a wide open pass, I think to, I want to say Santana Pena down the left sideline, and it was just a miscommunication in the defense. It couldn't have been more obvious. And then the other one was also, I think, to Santana Pena, and it was a couple missed flagpoles, and she literally just ripped off a slant for a long touchdown. And that was just to get it started. And then from there, it just felt like Valor was playing catch-up. On top of that, I think it was obvious that this Arvada West team and their history was a little bit in their heads, too. And it just wasn't a good game. Like, watching the Chaparral game and watching the Arvada West game, it felt like 2 extremely different teams, which is interesting. And that's not something, I don't feel like that's something that Faith Prinzo can handle on her own. I don't think that's her responsibility as a player. That's probably more of a coaching thing. But as a quarterback, I didn't think she played horribly. It could have been worse, but you also got to keep in mind they were down like 2 scores. It felt like within 3 minutes of the game. So early. And she didn't have that interception, I don't think, until later on, like after the first couple drives. So there was that. I do feel like that was a fluke for the most part. I think I've seen Faith Prinzo play before, and she's better than that, and so we're just going to say that for now. Now, let's go ahead and talk about her game a little bit more here. I think her game is actually very similar to Zoey Fink in a lot of ways, but maybe a little bit of the more mature version, her being older. She's a better athlete right now. Faith Prinzo is. I think she is a solid athlete that throws a really nice spiral and can also scramble a bit more than maybe you would expect. I know Valor over there, they like running that little speed, sweep, triple option. They like running the option in general here. And on top of that, Prinzo will also scramble at pretty opportune times. And, they make the most out of that. She is somebody that has contributed a lot to this offense. Her being able to move and get yards on the ground, keeps the defense honest for the most part and allows Faith Prinzo to really operate this offense at a high level here because she's able to move around and make things happen. And so with that being said, I think a lot of the comparisons I made, probably specifically the comparisons I made involving Zoey Fink, that is, I think that she's similar to like Jalen Hurts. I get very, like, watching her play, I see Alexa Wilson light for sure, in their movement, in the athleticism, in the way that they throw the ball, except that Faith Prinzo is a lefty, so there's that difference there. I think there's a little bit of that in her game as far as comparisons go. Other things I really like about Prinzo's game, though, I think she's really mastered throwing the short game and does a good job getting the ball out on time and accurately, too. She could throw some pretty tight windows, and it's almost always on the money as well. And then speaking of throwing on the money, there are definitely flashes of great throws downfield and over the middle. When she's in rhythm, she's lethal. There's one throw, I think it was against, I want to say it was against TCA, and it was like a casual, like 15 to 20-ish yard throw, and it was like a deep curl or something like that. I don't know if it was a deep curl. I think maybe they were improvising and the receiver just decided to settle near the sideline, but she just ripped one from the pocket, or near the pocket, over to that sideline and just beat out the safety and corner that were closing on that one for her receiver to make a nice sideline catch. And that throw was the one that was like, yeah, she's a watch list player. She's somebody that can play on the college level. Definitely has some arm talent there. So it's arm talent that you can see applied in a game. I think there's quarterbacks that have practice arm talent, and then there's quarterbacks that, have arm talent that's very obvious, and it shows in game, and it shows plenty in game, I would say. So there you go. Now, talking about areas of improvement, I know she's going into her senior year, but always things to improve here. I think she just needs to be a little bit more consistent when taking shots downfield, similar to Zoey Fink, but I do think there are times where, the timing or the accuracy is slightly off. I don't think the timing is as good as Zoey Fink here, even though she does have a stronger arm. But I think these are just things she could iron out in an off season. Some of it may be quarterback and receiver chemistry stuff that she needs to figure out and whatnot. But there are just times where, she's not exactly hitting them in stride all the time when she's throwing downfield. And I think the consistency could definitely improve here, and that would take her game to the next level if she could connect on more of these deeper shots, mid-range shots, when she decides to take those shots. Now, for her to take that next step in addition to that, I would like to see her do more as an improviser and just be more efficient out of structure when throwing downfield, some more downfield stuff. And what I mean by that is that I feel like there are times where she feels the rush coming and she turns into scrambling mode, or her mind is like set into scrambling mode right when she breaks that pocket, and she loses a little bit of that downfield vision. She's not looking downfield right after she decides to scramble or roll out or make a move on somebody. I think there are some plays that are missed where, she will make a rusher miss, and instead of redirecting downfield here, if there's somebody that's wide open in front of her, she'll throw it, but she's mostly set on running. Now, the thing with that is that I would like for her to know that, hey, you can make the rusher miss depending on the timing of the deeper route and whatnot. The play is still going on, so you could make a miss and then go ahead and get back to your progressions and throw downfield. I think, like Fink, she wants to take care of the football. That's what every football coach in America preaches to their quarterback. Take care of the football. But, if you go into a play and you read it pre-snap that they're in this, type of defense, I don't know who runs one high safety all the time without running multiple rushers in there. But if you read something like that, then, you could be like, all right, well, there's two rushers. If I make one miss and there's still only one high safety and I have two deep routes, somebody's going to be open after I make this person miss. And so just having more awareness that, these are the deep shots that you can take after the play breaks down a little bit up front from a blocking standpoint, right? And so, and even if it breaks down and, the timing is off here, I would still like to see her improvise more and be more aggressive going downfield. Aggressive in an efficient way. That doesn't mean just start slinging it downfield and throwing Hail Marys. Being opportunistic with who's open, and taking your time to scan the field, knowing like, okay, I beat one rusher. They're only sending one. I have a little bit of time to turn my head here and look for another throw, because this is kind of the area where this receiver should still be in. Or you could also tell your receivers where to sit after routes and whatnot to make it easier for you to take some of those deeper shots. I just think there are times where, once she makes that first rusher miss, she's like set on running the football and not looking downfield. And so I would like for her, just like Zoey Fink, to be more opportunistic and take some deeper shots here, especially out of structure. I think she's a good enough athlete where she can be very dangerous out of structure when she commits herself as a passer and whatnot. But, I would just like to see her take that next step. I think if she can continue to develop mentally and physically as well, but mentally for sure here, she could definitely take her game to the next level. And by next level, I think they could be a state champion if she takes that next step in processing plays and being more dangerous out of structure, not just being able to run it, right? Because they know that you're a runner, so you're going to have linebackers that are pressing up, right? When they see you break contain, they're going to take steps up naturally. That'll take players out of their position, more opportunities to throw downfield, right? And I think to be a true, efficient, and dangerous dual threat, it's knowing, okay, let me just go get yards, let me just go run this ball, right? But knowing, okay, I can do that, but also, right, when I get them into thinking that we're in a rhythm or having a pulse for the type of plays that we're running, I'm going to, run up to the line and then just throw it 30 yards downfield right behind him, right? And that's something that's going to happen. There's going to be opportunities where an undisciplined defense will do everything to stop you on the run once you break contain. And once you get the defense in that, oh, I gotta stop this quarterback from running, that's when they lose focus for that half second for an opportune shot downfield. And so I would like to see her continue to work on that processing skill there. I think there are times where it flashes here and there. Like, it's not like she didn't do that at all last season. I would just like to see more consistency there. I think this Valor team, I know they're a deep roster over there. They have athletes everywhere. They can be some very serious home run hitters out of structure if they get that timing, that chemistry down here in the offseason, which I'm sure they're working at, right? So we'll see about that. By the way, as of right now, I don't believe Faith Prinzo has any flag football offers or any that, she has posted at least. So I feel like a big year here could definitely, garner her some interest, because I do think she has the physical talent to make it on the college level. I think she would be somebody that you would bring in and hope to develop behind an established quarterback if you are looking for a QB here. But depending on how well she did in this offseason, she could be a year one starter on the college level. And so we will see what happens there. But before we get there, let's talk about her senior year, this 2025 campaign. Valor Christian, they got some big games this season in the regular season to start here for sure, to get them ready for the postseason inevitably. But to start, on August 29th, you have the Holy War. They play Regis Jesuit. I think it's a big game, because if you're Valor, you really don't want to lose this matchup at all. I think the rivalry of this game and just how big it is on the boys' side of things, I'm sure it's the same on the girls' side of things as well, or at least I think it should be. If you're Valor Christian, you do not want to allow Regis Jesuit to beat you. And I think there's no reason that they should beat you. They played a close game last year. We'll say that, or I think they did play a close game last year. I think realistically, Valor should not play them as close as they did last season. So that's all I'm saying about that. Now, they do play Arvada West twice, September 6th and the 27th. So near the beginning of the month and at the end of the month. Now, this is not the same Arvada West team as last year. You lose some pretty key components, specifically, their big three of Sailor Swanson, Sarah Walker, and Molly Shellpepper. Three players who have basically all took turns, except for Sailor. I guess she's the quarterback, so she just did it all the time. But they all took turns, beating Valor and having big games against them. There's going to be some new faces over there. I assume Emerson Drake will be at quarterback. I think Santana Pena is still there. You have a pretty good defense over there as well, and Alex Antle, Harper Tillman holding it down. I assume she's going to take on a bigger offensive role potentially over there. And then obviously still coached by Lacey Abell over there at Arvada West. It's not the same team, but this Arvada West team is still going to make the playoffs. And honestly, I don't think it is crazy to say that they are a dark horse contender, because it's Arvada West, and that's how good this program is, right? It's not crazy to say that. But if you're Valor Christian, you also lose some players, specifically Alexis Wood graduating. That's a tough loss. Margot Harry, I think, as well on defense. Not Reese Beezer, Sadie Lee, going to Graceland, I believe. Shout out her. So you lose some players for Valor, but you bring back Prinzo, both of them, in Faith and Savannah. You bring back a number of good players on the defense between Beezer, between Westcott, I think, is coming back, one of their rushers. I think Jade Harry will be coming back as well. They have, I would say Valor has more players coming back here than Arvada West does as far as key players go. And so if you're Valor Christian, regardless of who's coming back, you need to beat Arvada West eventually. I think as of right now, Prinzo is 0-3 against them officially, right? Officially. I don't know what happened in their first year because it wasn't sanctioned yet. That was a Broncos thing. But, right now she's 0-3 against Arvada West. If they played Arvada West even in that first year, I'm pretty sure A West went undefeated in that season they won state. So they wouldn't have beat them then either. Eventually, you have to beat this program. You got to get that monkey off your back. You cannot make them into something bigger than what they are, right? You need to get over that hump. I think it's just right now, or at least last year, it felt like a huge mental block for this Valor Christian team beating Arvada West, because they would beat literally everyone else. And then they would lose to Arvada West over and it got, not only did they lose them over and over again, but it got worse after every single time. And to me, that is a sign of things just getting worse from a mental standpoint. You got to be mentally strong, take care of business, if not once, twice, so that you can move past that, go into the playoffs and feel good about yourself. And if you beat them once, hey, that's great. You beat them once, you could beat them again type of mentality. And that's something you want to have. And so I think that's an important one coming from a just mental strength standpoint and overcoming those challenges mentally, right? I think they can beat them. Will they? We'll see. I think it's going to be a great game, though, or it should be a great game, great couple games here this season. Then they play Ralston Valley twice on the 10th and then on the 4th of October. You know, that's a team that they beat. I think they beat a couple of times last season. Ralston Valley lost to other teams, but they always lost to Valor, so there's that as well. Ralston is to Valor what Valor is to Arvada West. One has to think Ralston Valley is looking to go ahead and get them off their back here and get a dub in one of these. And that's a talented defense over there as well. They also lost players. I mean, everyone lost players on this 5A classification. And so it'll be an interesting game, or I should say games against them. And then they play Mountain Vista near the end of the season, a battle for Highlands Ranch here pretty much. They did not play. I was surprised looking this up. They did not play at all last year, which was kind of weird. So they play this year here, and I think it should be a very interesting game. I mean, Mountain Vista being the defending state champs. We'll talk about their quarterback later on in this episode. I think it's probably a bigger test for this defense, for this Valor defense against the Mountain Vista offense here. But, you know, if you're Faith Prinzo, you want to put pressure on Ariana Akey to score on every single drive here. That'll help out your defense a little bit more, just knowing that you have that help from the offense. So there you go. And then also potentially being a state champion. That would be huge moving forward. So there you go. And then right at the end of the season, they play TCA. TCA brings back more players than Valor does. And considering that team went into overtime with them last season, I don't know. Things get in right at the end of the season. It feels like a trap game. Granted, TCA did lose their head coach, so I'm sure there's a question of how this team will look compared to last year's team. But regardless, it's at the end of the season, so they got time to figure it out. And then second, it's also at the end of the season, so it feels like this game will probably not matter at all as far as playoff implications go for Valor. For TCA, it'll matter a lot because I think this could definitely mean the difference between being the 1 and the 2 seed, depending on how everything shakes out, right? Depending on how everything shakes out. And so TCA definitely wants to win this game at the end, especially going into playoffs right after this. So there is that. It's going to be an interesting year for Valor Christian, and so let's talk about them here a little bit as well as Faith Prinzo. I think Valor is a contender. You know, just looking at their schedule last season, they only lost to Arvada West, but they beat plenty of good teams and like playoff teams at that. And so I feel like this Valor team could definitely make a run. Now, how far they go, I do think partially depends on Faith Prinzo. You know, can she take a step forward in her game? Can she get better? Can she overcome some of the losses this team is going through with their great athletes? Losing an Alexis Wood, I mean, she was a great receiver and athlete for them. There are plays where Prinzo would throw it to her and Wood would make the rest happen. Plain and simple. She would just break. I think it happened against Chaparral. You know, she threw a slant to her and she brought it to the house, just making people miss here and there. And so overcoming that is definitely going to be something. But you got to remember, it's still Valor Christian. They got athletes over there. They are loaded. And so what is Faith Prinzo going to do to get these newer faces the ball more and make them dangerous and respected amongst the flag football community here? Players that you got to all pay attention to so that one is not just bracketed all game. And I think if Faith Prinzo can take that next step forward, I think Valor is definitely a favorite to win state, considering how much they bring back compared to other contenders from the last couple years. And so this is their window with Chaparral, I talked about them, being a young team and opening their own window. For Valor, I think this is their window. For Faith Prinzo, this is her last season. If it's going to happen, it's going to happen this season, or it has to happen this season. And so with that added pressure, I feel like it makes it for an exciting story and season for Valor Christian this upcoming year. So shout out Faith Prinzo, shout out Valor, wishing them all the best of luck here in this 2025, ahead of this 2025 campaign. Now moving on, we are moving to talk about another quarterback, a potential rival for Valor here, and that is Addy Beck, the quarterback for Cherry Creek. Addy Beck, as she's better known here, started for them the last 2 seasons. Obviously, last year was the only sanctioned year, so that's the stats we have from them. I will say, though, in their first year, they went to state and they lost to Arvada West, right? In their second year here, they had a pretty decent year. So let's talk about it. Beck here last season threw for 3,781 yards, 60 touchdowns, only 9 interceptions. Also had 459 rushing yards and 5 rushing touchdowns. Did not play the first couple games of the season, but I did eventually get to watch her play here. Her best statistical game came against Pomona, who they beat 32-13. She went 31 of 36 for 382 yards and 4 touchdowns. In the regular season, though, she had probably one of her best ones, probably one of Cherry Creek's best ones, where they beat Arvada West 27-18. Gino was at this game and covered it. So if you want to check out that recap, you could go ahead and look through all the episodes for that one. But she went 22 of 28 for 266 yards, 4 touchdowns, 1 pick. Also had 27 rushing yards. Put on an absolute clinic and went toe-to-toe with one of the best offenses of all time in Colorado girls high school flag football history. And so love seeing that. And then in the playoffs, they would go ahead and beat Chatfield 32-28 in a shootout here. They would win 38-32. She had 258 yards, 5 touchdowns in that game, 1 pick, 32 rushing yards against a Chatfield team who won state a couple years ago when it was first started, so there's that. But they have plenty of good athletes over there, and Addy Beck played a great game against them. And then against Legend, Addy Beck had she was part of already one of the most iconic girls high school flag football game. Forget girls high school flag football, one of the best Colorado high school football games of all time. A playoff game in the quarterfinals against a Legend that was a shootout. In that game, she won 34-46, 309 yards, did throw 2 picks. I don't know why they didn't list any of her touchdowns, but I went and rewatched that whole game, and she definitely threw 5 touchdowns. So 5 touchdowns to 2 picks, and had 51 rushing yards. Unfortunately, coming up short, losing 35-40. Legend, they would go ahead and put together a nice drive, resulting in a last second, pretty much a walk-off touchdown to win the game 40-35 here. And that's how Cherry Creek's season would end, in one of the greatest football games in Colorado high school football history, and one that's definitely going to be remembered as one of the first iconic girls high school flag football games of all time here in Colorado. And so already a part of history, and I love to see it here. But Addy Beck, she is a very talented player that makes this Cherry Creek offense go. Let's talk about her film and the things that I really like about her game, both watching this Legend game and also getting to see her play in person the last couple years. And so let's talk about it. I think the thing that I like most about her game, and there's a lot of things to like, but I think this is the one that defines her and separates her from other quarterbacks, is that she is an elite improviser and dual threat. She's a very efficient runner who can make people miss and force defenses to pay attention to her on the run. But her throwing off platform, she might be one of the best off platform on the run throwers we have ever seen in Colorado. As far as college comparisons go, talking women's college flag football, I definitely see a little bit of Jasmine Roden, what she's able to do spinning the ball, also taking the snap from almost 10 yards back here and just making it happen. I see a lot of that in how she works out of structure. That's what I love to see there. I mean, she just throws as good on the run, if not better on the run, than in structure here when she's static, and she can make some very impressive throws all over the field. She can make every single throw all over the field here, and she can make it from just standing in the pocket. She can make it from rolling out. She can make it from, throwing off platform. I mean, she can throw dots out here. That is what she does for Cherry Creek flag football, and her ability to just throw an accurate pass from anywhere on the field makes her dangerous, makes her honestly the ideal flag football quarterback, somebody that could make throws in any situation and be somebody that can keep drives alive just by being able to make pretty much any throw. And so you add on that she could run the football, you add on that, I mean, she's also, I think, a pretty decent processor and knows when to make the quick throw or buy time looking for a better throw down the field later in a play. I mean, she is one of the elite quarterbacks in the state, truly, and one of the elite quarterbacks, truly, in the entire country. Now, and by the way, sorry, before I get into areas of improvements, comparison-wise, I mean, from a boys football standpoint, she's very Patrick Mahomey, right? Makes a lot of throws off platform, has excellent arm talent. You're not going to see that everywhere. As far as college goes, I see a lot of Jasmine Roden. I still think Jasmine Roden throws a tighter spiral than Addy Beck right now, but that could definitely change. Now, areas of improvements, I think this is the biggest one that I want to really touch on because I was able to watch this Legend game here, but I do think she has a little bit of a gunslinger mentality, and not always in a good way, and that's partially what makes her dangerous and partially, something that you can exploit as a defense. Versus Legend, she threw two pretty bad back-to-back picks in the second half that I would say ended up costing them the game. Now, before you get in an uproar, I'm not blaming her for the loss because this Cherry Creek defense could have also stopped Legend from driving the length of the field for a game-winning touchdown. That's something that could have happened. But the first pick she threw was just a really bad interception. I mean, she was running around trying to make something happen. She threw over the middle. I think she felt like, just based on her, it looked like, just based on, the play clock that was going off in her own head mentally, that she was going to have someone perfectly timed over the middle, and it just wasn't that. She was a little late to this throw, and the linebackers read it as well, so it wasn't going to be good regardless. And, it was just a bad pick on the run, and not only was it a bad pick, but it was the length of the field pick six that shifted the entire momentum of this game. I feel like if they got a touchdown here, this would have been a very different game than a pick six going Legend's way. And to make it worse, on the second drive here, they had a good drive going. It was a red zone look. She saw the receiver, but she just saw it late, and the safety was able to undercut this throw and pick it off. It wasn't a pick six this time, but, I mean, it was just a late throw, while on the run here. I don't know if it would have got there if she sat her feet and just, rifled this one in, because that safety really, was looking and baited her into this throw almost. But it was just not a great look, and a very unfortunate look because it gave Legend the ball an opportunity to go score. And so those two interceptions, I just felt like kind of embodied a little bit of some of her weaknesses as a quarterback here for Cherry Creek. Now, like I said, this gunslinger mentality is also the reason why they're able to recover from that and, have the lead, I think, at the end of the game, right? I think there's no doubting that for sure. They wouldn't have gotten this far without her doing what she did. I just think in those two moments, and unfortunately back-to-back drives that went into the fourth quarter, it was just tough to see, right? And so if there's any weakness, that's probably it. Maybe she does a little bit too much. That's where some of her interceptions come from. But, I mean, altogether, I think she's a good quarterback. I could also say, I mean, this is just nitpicking at this point. Her mechanics could use some work here. A little bit of more torque from the torso and whatnot to put a better spin on the ball, quicker releases. This is just me being very picky there, footwork stuff, right? But naturally as a thrower, I mean, she's so talented and she has like the brain to be a high level quarterback. And so with that being said, if she could clean up some of those gunslinger mentality mistakes, or at least not do that on back-to-back drives, I think Cherry Creek is a contender already, and it's because of her in large part. I mean, they have a lot of talent over there. Jalen Nelson is a great player that we'll talk about on another episode here. But, Addy Beck being one of the elite quarterbacks in the state, in the country, really takes his team to the next level here, from a perennial playoff team, to a true contender because of how dangerous she is. I think she's legitimately somebody that could go toe-to-toe with any other quarterback in the state. If it comes down to a quarterback duel, she's going to give you one of the best chances to win it. Now, unfortunately, she was dueling one of the other best quarterbacks in the state in Maddie Smolin, who, I don't want to say they have similar play styles because I don't think they do. There are some things they do similarly, but, Maddie Smolin is a great quarterback in her own, and somebody that we're going to talk about on another episode. Not this one, unfortunately, but another episode for sure. But back to Addy Beck, I mean, she's a great quarterback. With that being said, as of right now, I don't know what her flag football offers are like, right? But I do think she is more focused on basketball. And I don't want to say unfortunately. I mean, she has a couple offers, right? She's a good ball player over there at Cherry Creek who, I mean, has had a history of great basketball players going on and being great at flag football. Shout out Molly DeRiggi for them last season, right? But I'm just putting this out there. If she was to choose a future in flag football, she would have a great one. Not good, not average. No, she would be one of the elite quarterbacks in women's college flag football if given the opportunity, if convinced, really, to go play it. I legitimately believe that. I think she is a great enough athlete to play with those players. I think she has the arm talent to throw with some of the best in the entire country. I think she has it all. Now, she's also a great basketball player, is what it seems like as well. And so I assume she's going to pick basketball, but all I'm saying is that if she wanted a future in flag football, she would easily have it and more. So there's my pitch to do flag football. But let's go ahead and talk about this season here. So first off, Cherry Creek's schedule is not done, or at least not posted yet here. I know they're going to play in that Centennial League, so there's going to be big games all around. I don't know, Arapahoe, Grandview, Eagle Crest. Those are the teams that always come up. Smoky Hill has some players over there. But Cherry Creek definitely won that league last year, so there's that. Now, some big games out of league. They play Mountain Vista very, very early on here. They did that last season as well. But I don't think Addy Beck played in, or maybe she did play in that game. It was very early on in the season, last season too. But they'll play them on August 25th. That'll be an interesting one. The defending state champs, they have a quarterback of their own in Ariana Akey. They do lose a lot of receivers as well. But, so does Cherry Creek. They lose Molly DeRiggi, Sophia Ball, so there's definitely players being lost on both sides here. Could be interesting. Could be a nice quarterback battle. And then on September 10th, they play Chaparral here. I don't believe they played them at all last year, and so this will be a new opponent for them. They got a young quarterback over there. They got some pretty good athletes in general over there at Chap, and so they're going to be pushed in a very different way than when they played some other teams last season. And so it's going to be interesting. Talking about Cherry Creek and Addy Beck, though, I think of this season, they can definitely win a state championship. Now, As far as the team goes, I think defensively you want to see some improvements. I don't think they're as good a defensive team as a Valor Christian. It could be argued as a Mountain Vista or a West. Last season they weren't. And so going into this year without some more starters, how good is this defense going to be? We'll see. What we do know, though, is that this offense is going to be popping off regardless. Watching them in their game against Legend, I mean, there were just so many times where, they would run the play. It would not be the greatest spacing all the time, or, the defense would figure out what they're running and just help them settle down. But it would come down to Addy Beck just running around and making something happen. And she did that over and over and over and over again. And I think she's going to be able to continue to do that even with some newer receivers. I mean, she'll still have Jalen Nelson, who I think is due for a big breakout season here. Definitely somebody to keep an eye on for sure. And I think that's really all you need. I mean, Cherry Creek's a good enough school where you could find some great athletes to fill out the rest, some new targets for Addy Beck here to, really get going and be a contender, right? And so I think Cherry Creek is a contender if this offense is going with Addy Beck, and I think they will be. This is going to be a very fun team to watch. They're going to put up a lot of points. There's going to be some more iconic quarterback duels later this season, in the regular season and in the postseason as well. I think that's just something to expect from this Cherry Creek team. Regardless, wishing Addy Beck all the best of luck, not only in flag football, but in all the sports that she's doing, basketball as well, and wishing the best of luck to Cherry Creek flag football as they go ahead and try to tackle this 2025 flag campaign and make a run at state. We'll see what happens. Okay, certainly, but definitely not least, we've been talking about making runs at state, making runs of state. This player actually did it with Mountain Vista here in their first year, also becoming the first, as in the first in the CHASA sanctioned era, the first Colorado Girls High School flag football team to go undefeated out of Mountain Vista. We have the incoming senior, that is Ariana Akey. She, for us last year, won Most Valuable Playmaker, Best QB winner, All PMC team. In her technically, I think, first year of varsity flag, she threw for 4,435 yards, 82 touchdowns, which led the state, 9 interceptions, and then I think she led all quarterbacks in rushing, I want to say, with 1,243 rushing yards and 13 touchdowns, 95 touchdowns on the year for Ariana Akey, who did it all for this Mountain Vista team on their way to a state championship. But let's go ahead and talk about some things or some games that really made her stand out, starting with the first game that we saw her in. Got to watch her play a lot this season, but against Arvada West. We were covering the kickoff of the season, and we got to watch Mountain Vista versus A West, and she went 23 of 31 for 197 yards, 3 touchdowns, 1 pick, and 121 rushing yards on only 8 carries against the then defending state champs Arvada West in a 25-13 win here. I mean, she just went off against this team, and that's pretty much when we knew that she was going to be special from this first game here. She would then have other big games, specifically against a Legend on September 5th. She had a great game against them, 19 of 34 for 232 yards, 5 passing touchdowns, also had 127 rushing yards on 13 carries in that game. And one of those passing touchdowns was a last-second Hail Mary to win the game, 31-26 against the Legend, which was absolutely massive. She would have other big games as well. Regis Jesuit, 31 of 45, 342 yards, 5 passing touchdowns in that game, also 23 rushing yards. Heritage, 302 yards, 6 touchdowns against them, 76 rushing yards. Ralston Valley, 309 yards, 3 touchdowns and 81 rushing yards against a Ralston Valley team that has a pretty good defense here. And, that was just the regular season as they rolled to an undefeated record as the 1 seed in the playoffs. They would go ahead and play Regis Jesuit again and beat them worse this time, 56-7. She won 19 of 25 for 258 yards and 6 touchdowns, also 45 rushing yards and 2 more rushing touchdowns in that one. Against Thunder Ridge, a Battle of Highlands Ranch teams here, beat them 55-20, 22 of 34 for 252 passing yards, 5 touchdowns. Also had 109 rushing yards and 3 more rushing touchdowns. So I think she had 8 touchdowns. 8 touchdowns in her first 2 playoff games. So 16 total touchdowns in case you weren't counting there. And those are both defenses that have linebackers and rushers that are college level players, I think. And so that is insane. And then they go ahead and play Legend in the semifinals. They did win this 37-19, but this was much closer than it looked in this game. Let's start with the stats first. In this game, she won 22 of 31 for 331 yards, 4 touchdowns, 1 pick. Also had 53 rushing yards and 2 rushing touchdowns. And this was a close one, a low-key quarterback duel. Already another classic here with Maddie Smolin of Legend, who has been in 2 quarterback duels in the postseason. One against Addy Beck, which she won, and then this one against Mountain Vista, which was close, but unfortunately lost in this one. Now, the key thing to remember, because some of you did not, listen to our recaps, our playoff recaps, which I would encourage you to go ahead and listen to. But Ariana Akey sustained a injury in this game. I'm pretty sure she hyperextended her knee in this game and went on and had a rushing touchdown and I think passing touchdown on the run after the injury. Now, the crazy part is, in Colorado, and I don't know why they do this, the semifinals game and the state championship game are on the same day. So a couple hours later, she went and played Arvada West with this injury and would beat them 32-21, a game where, it was a quarterback duel here between her and now college quarterback Sailor Swanson, where she won 32 of 41, 331 yards, 2 touchdowns, 1 pick, but with a busted leg, 81 rushing yards, 3 rushing touchdowns, one of the greatest performances from a Colorado quarterback in a state championship game that we have ever seen in all the years that we have covered Colorado high school football, both on the boys and girls level here. For her to, first off, beat Legend in a duel. This is a very athletic and good Legend team. Beat them in a duel, sustain that injury, play with the injury in the state championship, and still dominate. She was also playing on defense. Against Arvada West as well in that game. She had 5 tackles, a sack, and 2 interceptions in that game on defense. Is absolutely insane, and she wasn't even fully healthy. That is something that people just don't know here, and I'm sure she's not going to brag about either. I think she's a very humble athlete over there, very process driven and all that, always looking to get better. She's a perfectionist, but to overcome all of that, and on top of that, by the way, there's the pressure of losing, because they haven't lost at all this season. I think going into this year, they haven't lost since 2023, late 2023 in the playoffs. So, and then going into that state championship game, they're on a winning streak here. That is definitely saying something for her to play at such a high level. By the way, in her first year of varsity flag football, did not play flag football in one of the pilot years. But in her first year, she went 19-0. So in her career, she's 19-0 as far as high school flag football goes here in Colorado. And so we cannot talk enough about how historic this is. On top of that, there's some symbolism to beating Nevada West, a team who won state the year before. I would say Sailor Swanson and Sarah Walker were the faces of Colorado flag football. This felt like a little bit of a passing of the torch here. And obviously they all play for Lace Up Junior, so they have a lot of respect for each other and whatnot. But I think it's pretty comfortable to say, as of right now, Ariana Akey is the face of Colorado girls high school flag football. And, she's going to be a force on the next level. But before I get ahead of myself, let's go ahead and talk about what makes her so great. Starting with her strengths, just off the bat here, strength-wise, she's an elite athlete. There isn't a player that we've seen on the high school level with this level of speed, agility, and I would even say with this combination of speed, agility, and arm talent. And Colorado, we have athletes here. I think the thing that separates Colorado athletes from other ones as far as girls sports are concerned is that not only do we have athletes, but we have tall athletes as well that cover a lot of space. And Ariana Akey was able to dominate this level of competition, a level where she went up against multiple players that are college level players or already committed to women's college flag football programs all across the country, right? And she beat him over and over and over and over and over again and did her thing. And so her athleticism is just elite. That's something that separates her from other players, not only in the state, but the entire country. I think it's going to be hard to find a quarterback that can outrun Ariana Akey on this high school level here. On top of that, she's a home run hitter as a runner because how elusive she is, how she could stop on a dime, how her acceleration goes from 0 to 100. She does a lot of things that is just elite as an athlete and separates her. As far as passing the ball, because of how athletic she is, she could run around over and over again and then with a flick of the wrist, just launch it like 40, 50 yards downfield. And she has done that a lot of times. Not to say that she can't throw the short game. She could definitely throw the short game. She throws a nice spiral. She could fit into tight windows. I think on the run, she makes some very accurate throws all over the field. The arm talent is definitely there. I think she has the arm talent of somebody that could play on the college level. Now, another thing that I would also consider a strength is that she's extremely versatile. Athletically, she can pretty much play every single position on the next level, on the college level, that is. She could be on defense, she could be a rusher, she could be a linebacker, which is what I think she did in that state championship game. Either that or safety, or DB in general. I think she athletically could play all of the positions you want in flag football. If we're talking about, on offense, outside of quarterback, she could be a receiver. She's dangerous in space. Same with rush or, center and whatnot as well. Super dangerous in space. Do it all from that standpoint too, right? And so she athletically can dominate all the positions, which is saying something. I think if you're a program that's just starting, you would love to have an Ariana Akey because, regardless of where you put her, she's going to be contributing a lot to your team. Somebody that you can definitely build around. And so just super versatile. She's a ball player. She could play football straight up. I know, and this is from conversations that I've had with her mom and whatnot. I know she played flag football growing up and, very well respected on the field, on the playgrounds down over there in Highlands Ranch. And, that is a spot that has a lot of great football players. Let's not forget that Austin Bodreski also graduated from Mountain Vista. And so for Mountain Vista to have two great quarterbacks, two of the best in the state in 1 year is absolutely special. But enough about boys football there. She's a ball player, right? She is a football player that you can play pretty much anywhere. But I think she definitely is a game changer at quarterback. So there you go. As far as comparisons go, I think from a boy perspective, and for me it's hard to not make this comparison, but I see a lot of Kyler Murray, just elite athleticism, being able to do things that, other people will work as hard as they can for years and will just never be able to do. that's that type of special athleticism that Ariana Akey has when it comes to playing flag football. So I do see a little bit of Kyler Murray, especially very early on Kyler Murray, the one that ran the ball a whole ton more. As far as stylistically on the college level, I think I see a little bit of Madison Carrera as well. A little bit, not a lot, but a little bit. I think maybe to be a little bit more realistic right now, I see a lot of Kennedy Hayes, the Southwestern quarterback, who's a great athlete, has a great arm, and dominated Arizona when she was in high school as well. And so I like that blend of comparison right there. Now, as far as areas of improvements go, because I still think there's things more specifically at the quarterback spot that she can improve on. I think her timing downfield can use some continuous improvement. It's good, but it could be great, right? Would like to see her throw from the pocket a little bit more and make some of those deeper throws. And really, that's nitpicking, but I think to separate her from other quarterbacks around the country, timing is everything, right? And going into this season, in fact, she does lose a decent amount of receivers, so we're going to see just how good that timing is going into her senior year, and so that's a great opportunity right there. Another thing I think she can definitely improve on is that I do think she relies a little bit too much on her athleticism at points rather than properly processing a defense and what she's given, dissecting it, and then making the right throw, right? I think this will improve with maturity as she gets more games under her belt. I know she did a lot of club flag football as well, 5v5s by the way, and so that'll help with the processing too, because I do think it's a much quicker game in 5s than 7s, and so it's going to be interesting to see where that is going into her senior year, but would love to see her continue to improve as a passer, really master passing the ball, because I legit think, and I'm just going to go ahead and check, I legit think if she wanted to, she could definitely throw for 400 yards. This would be crazy. It would have to be a quarterback duel, but I could see her going for 500 yards as well. But that's, like I said, only a quarterback duel. The most she has thrown for is 342 against Regis Jesuit. And, I mean, against a legend, she was close to that, 339. So I think this is probably, last year was the worst version as a passer that we're going to see of Ariana Akey, because I think she's going to continue to get better, and make some of those tougher throws downfield that require that precision, that timing, all the things that you need from the pocket here, because we know what she could do as an improviser. We know what she could do as a runner, but if she can make all those throws every single level, she's going to be elite. She's going to be unstoppable. And so would love to continue to see her develop a little bit more as a passer here. And like I said, that's just me nitpicking, right? She's elite enough of an athlete to earn a position pretty much anywhere else. But I think if she wants to continue to play quarterback, she has to continue to make those progressions and grow as a player. Now, talking about her future, right now it is July 27th, 2025, and I'm going to go ahead and list the time, 9:52 a.m. when I am talking, when I'm recording this right now. And these are the offers that we know Ariana Akey has, just based on what we saw on social media. We have Midland, Roberts, Wesleyan, I think, Kansas Wesleyan, Lees McRae, Defiance, and then Hope was the most recent one. On top of that, this is insider information, so I'm not going to expose too much here, but there's definitely interest from plenty of colleges here for Ariana Akey. I think there are some that want to see what she does her senior year before they offer, which is interesting, but she definitely has a lot of opportunities to choose from, some at quarterback, some as listed as an athlete. I think actually most of these she's listed as an athlete, which is definitely interesting there. Regardless, I think she's going to play women's college flag football. I know she's a great track athlete. There's some interest there for both track and flag football, so just putting that out there. But, I think she has a bright future here. Whether she's playing quarterback or a different position, she has the athleticism to be a great player wherever she plays. And right now, I think it's fair to say that she is the face of Colorado girls high school flag football. And if she's the face, we're in amazing hands, is all I'm going to say. Now, before we talk about too far into the future, let's talk about the near future. Let's talk about this 2025 season here. Mountain Vista, they are going to be defending their title. I think it is a lot to expect them to go undefeated again. First off, because, it's another year of flag football being a thing in Colorado. Every year there's been leaps and bounds here. It's been growing so much, and we've been lucky to be able to cover these first couple years and witness that firsthand and document that for y'all, the listeners. And so every team is going to get better. I think it is extremely fair to say that there's going to be a team that kind of comes out of nowhere and takes a massive leap forward, right? And it could be any of the teams that they've scheduled right here. And so let's go ahead and go over their schedule because it's tough. It's tough for sure. So let's go ahead and start with, I would say, maybe their first quarterback duel, Cherry Creek. And they play over at Cherry Creek on August 25th at 7 p.m. I think that is a must-watch game, whether you're a fan or a college scout or whatever. I mean, this will absolutely be a quarterback duel. You have college talent on both sides. It should definitely get interesting here. I will say they do play Doherty on the 19th. That's probably worth mentioning. Maybe a team that takes a step forward. We'll see. They do return a lot of players. They had 2 players go play women's college flag football that are graduating from last year, so there you go. But it's going to be interesting for sure. But I think Cherry Creek is the first big game to look out for here. And it's going to be big because there's going to be a quarterback duel. I mean, both teams lose some of their top receivers here. So it's going to be interesting to see where both teams are. I know for Cherry Creek, like we talked about in the Addy Beck segment, they lose Molly DeRiggi, Sophia Ball, just to name a couple. For Mountain Vista, I mean, they lose Riley, Liana Rivera, who combined for 1,700 receiving yards right there. Isabella, I think, Valet? I don't think I ever figured that out. And then Serena Reeder as well will be some tough losses. She does bring back Braylon Looney, who is one of the best just offensive players in the entire state. This is going to be a big Braylon Looney year, I think. So there you go. She's going to be on another player spotlight episode, hopefully later on in this offseason. But it's going to be interesting to see what happens there. After that, they play Arapahoe in a very similar spot as Doherty. Then they play Arvada West. Not the same Arvada West team as last year, but neither is this Mountain Vista team. This A West team, they're going to have some new faces. I assume Emerson Drake will probably be their quarterback, and I think she's a very capable quarterback for them. They also have a great coaching staff who has done wonders with teams and has developed a great culture over there. And so that's always going to be a tough game. So there you go. Then they play Pondo, Thunder Ridge, some decent teams. They're all playoff teams here, by the way. I think almost everyone on this list are playoff teams. And then they play Chaparral. That'll be a game against Zoey Fink. They definitely return more than they do. So that's going to be an interesting game. But then 2 days later, you got a rematch in the semis. End of the crazy Hail Mary game from last year. This time playing in Parker, they got Legend. This is going to be a massive game on the 10th at 7 p.m. It's going to go crazy. It's going to go down over there between her and Maddie Smolin. Legend also losing some players there, so it's going to be really interesting to see what happens. Then you have Cherokee Trail, who I don't think made the playoffs last year, but, another team that could bounce back and really take a massive step forward. And then you have Douglas County, I think a sleeper team right here, who has a great quarterback in Jillian Cabral, who has a lot of athleticism, and frankly has the ability to extend plays and drives. That's going to be a dangerous one. So there you go. You have Heritage, you have Rock Canyon, and then you have Valor Christian. I think their first time ever playing Valor. Well, at least in the CHASA sanctioned era, and I think this will arguably be the battle for Highlands Ranch unless either of them lose to Thunder Ridge. So we'll see what happens there. But this will be a great game here. A duel with Faith Prinzo. Love it. Also a great Valor defense over there. A lot of athletes. So there you go. And then you have Regis Jesuit and Highlands Ranch to end the season. So it's a tough year. I mean, they're playing the top contenders, I would say, in 5A. Cherry Creek, Arvada West, you can't count them out yet. Chaparral, Legend, Valor Christian, they're playing the best of the best. And so we will see where this Mountain Vista team will be at the end of the regular season and have a pretty detailed idea. Now, the postseason, I think, will be a totally different thing, right? But we will be able to get a lot from there. And so she's going to be challenged throughout this year. This is a crazy tough schedule. But if anybody could do it, it could be the MVP from last year, one of the best athletes in the entire country, in Ariana Akey. And so we'll see how far her game has developed against teams and cultures that are established. As young as they are established here. And we'll just have to see what happens. Regardless, we love covering Ariana Akey. She's a great player, great person. Over there at Mountain Vista. It's going to be a really fun 2025 season, and we are looking forward to it. So best of luck to Ariana Akey and that Mountain Vista squad as they look to defend/win another state title here in the fall of 2025. Okay, so this is a quick update, but like 20 minutes after I recorded that Ariana Akey segment, she literally got offered by Ottawa, the defending national champions, I think 5 times running now. So huge offer already. And so there you go there. Wishing the best of luck to all of these great players. These 4 players and all the players that we talk about on our Spotlight episodes are on our watch list for Girls Flag Football. We put together a list of players that we feel like can play on the next level here, and we send those out to colleges and all of that great stuff. And so these 4 are on that list. The other players we'll talk about in future Spotlight episodes will be on that list as well. And so if you want to stay updated on when our episodes are dropping, make sure you follow us at Playmakers Corner on all of our social media, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok as well. We are live on all of those. And make sure you check out the other player spotlight episodes we did on some of our boys players, and then also past women's college flag football content, Colorado girls high school flag football content from last season. So there you go. But until next time, we'll catch you later.